Hi, this is Chris Campbell with the Food Institute, and welcome to the Food Institute podcast. This week we have John Dunham, president of John Dunham Associates, with us, and we're going to be taking the economic pulse of the nation. But first, if you're listening to us via YouTube, we ask that you subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with our latest content, and to hit the like button if you enjoyed this one in particular. With that said, I'll say hello to John. How are you doing today?
Hey, Chris, how are you? I'm doing great.
That's great to hear. I'm doing well. I'd like to jump right into it. We'll say the Department of Labor reported nearly 22 million continuing unemployment claims the week ending April 25th. Do you have any predictions on how this trend will play out in the coming weeks and into 2021? And what will that mean for the U.S. economy overall?
Yeah, this is a really important issue because nobody's ever seen unemployment reach levels like this before. There are about 150 million thereabouts people in the labor force. So at 22 million unemployed, you're looking at an unemployment rate approaching 15%, and that's likely to continue rising over the coming weeks and coming months as more and more people, first off, make it through the state systems and get to filing unemployment claims, and also as more and more of the economy continues to shut down. This is happening even as states are reopening parts of their economy. Businesses are also going bankrupt. I believe Hertz declared bankruptcy today. And as more and more businesses go bankrupt, more and more people are going to be thrown on the unemployment rolls. So this is going to continue for some time, at least until the end of the year.
What do you believe the unemployment rate could reach then?
Wow. Again, it's about 15% right now. I think, I mean, our forecasts say it's going to get in the 18, 19% range, but we are probably on the optimistic side.
I was going to say I've seen reports of up to 30%, so seeing some kind of optimism is good. Regarding that unemployment rate, though, we've seen some companies, including Kroger, Walmart, and Amazon, in the food sector, hiring hundreds of thousands of new employees during the coronavirus crisis. So, is there an opportunity for food and beverage companies to absorb some of the lost jobs by hiring these people, or do you think they will not result in a meaningful reduction in unemployment?
Right. Well, as you said, they are hiring these people. And so if you think about it, that 22 million is net unemployed after all of that hiring. Yeah, even during the Great Depression, and heck, during the plague of Justinian back in 600, uh, people were getting jobs and people were losing jobs during those periods of time. So there's always an ebb and flow of people in and out of employment. Um, it's just that the net is on the negative side right now.
So I find that to be interesting, and I've seen varying reports on the U.S. economy recovery following the coronavirus pandemic, and that's ranging from a speedy and full recovery to a recession to a depression. So, what are your near term and long term outlooks for the U.S. economy?
I think near term is just awful. Again, we're looking at numbers that when I was a when I was just a young economist lad, we would have never thought we would see. These are unbelievable economic indicators that we're seeing. So near term is going to be awful. This quarter is a lost quarter. Next quarter is probably a lost quarter. Um, Long term kind of depends on what you mean by long term. I think the closest thing to what we're seeing right now with a government imposed shutdown of the entire economy was the depression that followed World War II. Um, and during that depression, the economy fell by 12.7% over the course of a year. Uh, I think that's probably our best case. That the economy will fall dramatically over the course of this year, and then things will start to pick up. But that was a little bit different. Um, Demand still existed. It was just a big shift between military production to civilian production. So again, that's probably our best case.
So, what about the food and beverage sectors in particular? Do you think they're going to have a different kind of outlook compared to the rest of the economy, considering, food is an essential industry and, obviously, regardless of what's going on, people need to eat?
Yeah, exactly. Everyone has to eat, which makes the food and beverage sector recession resistant. It's not recession proof, but recession resistant. Um, I think you have to recognize that uh, when it comes to the on premise side of the business, it's just awful. I think I can't fathom the restaurant industry in particularly in cities coming out of this in any, you know, other than just being completely, I don't know, lame by the time it comes out. It's going to be really, really hurt. Um, from the from the off from the off premise, the home consumption side, I think the food industry is much better protected. But again, there are going to be budget constraints, right? You can't spend more on, even if you want to eat, you can't spend more on your food than you're bringing in. So you're going to see a big shift downward toward more price value brands, toward lower quality, uh, cuts of meat, things like that, once people can find them. Um, and that's going to have an effect on the bottom line of most food processors.
So that's kind of flowing into another question I had. So we've seen several economists and investors talk about inflation picking up and maybe even hyperinflation with all the government stimulus that's being offered. So do you think this is going to affect food prices in a meaningful way, or will that, need for, citizens being able to grab food, will that kind of keep prices in check as people will have less to spend in general?
I'm going to admit right off that I've been an inflation hawk for a long time. I'm a firm believer in the power of supply and demand. And if you print more money and you don't increase production, you're going to get inflation. But what we've seen, to get technical, what we've seen is something called the velocity of money just collapse, which means that people are not spending to the level that they used to. Money isn't turning around as fast as it used to. So that's kept a lid on inflation. But this is a little bit different. What we're seeing here is a supply shock, right? Even if people were making, with the government stimulus and all that, people are making more money or the same amount of money. There's just no supply there for them to purchase. There are no movie theaters to go to. There are no restaurants to go to. There are no airlines to fly on. And so when you have less supply and you have demand chasing that supply, you tend to get inflation. So I think we are going to see some inflation coming out of this.
Right. So I guess, we could go into the estimates for the second quarter GDP. So I saw that it indicated a 4.8% drop, and that's only measuring about 3 weeks of the government shutdown, as far as I can tell. Is that accurate? Is that something that you would agree with and that you've seen?
Well, that was what we reported, was the 4.8%
Okay.
drop. The question is what's going to happen over the course of the next few quarters. I mean, obviously the second quarter is just awful. I've seen predictions as high as a 30% drop in GDP for this quarter. And to put that into context, that if you look back at the worst quarters ever since the founding of the republic, the worst quarter ever was in 1932 when the economy fell by 13.4%. It's at the height of the Great Depression, and we're talking about 30% now, 3 times, almost 3 times as much. Before that, the recession I talked about, the depression I talked about in 1946 was a 12.5% drop. So this is unprecedented. This is a complete collapse of the U.S. economy and frankly the world economy. I guess the real question is what's going to happen over time. Are we going to get this sort of V-shaped recovery where everything just sort of shoots back up as everyone starts to go back to restaurants and stores and things? But I don't see that happening. You've disrupted the economy sort of the same way that the government's disrupted the economy the same way that a dam disrupts a river going into a delta. When the economies flow, it's a flow of services and goods and work. And when you disrupt that, it's like damming a river. And the area down below the river, the deltas and the streams and the ponds, they dry up. And it takes a while, even if you open up the dam some, it takes a while for that ecosystem to come back. And that's what we're going to see here. It's going to take a while for this economic ecosystem to come back.
So I know you said earlier that you think the most optimistic projection would be, a decline for about a year since the start of the coronavirus pandemic and then things starting to move up. And we've seen a lot of reports about these V-shaped recoveries. We talked about the recoveries a little bit earlier, and we started to see states reopen within the last 2 weeks. So is there hope that things will be able to turn around regionally and immediately, or is this going to be a continued economic contraction that just kind of hits everyone in a similar way over the course of the next year or so?
Um, yes and yes, right? You're going to see improvement in states that reopen, right? Local services are going to start. People will be able to get haircuts again, and people will be able to, maybe go to a restaurant. But these are going to be slow reopens. It's not going to be like suddenly the economy is just back to where it was. Um, I'm in New York City, and if restaurants were allowed to open at 50% capacity in New York City, they just wouldn't reopen because they can't make enough money to pay their rent. And there's going to be, the effect of bankruptcies are going to spread throughout the economy. Also, this is a very integrated economy, right? The economy of Wyoming is not solely in Wyoming. It receives supplies and inputs and sends out materials to all over the country. And until the entire country, and in fact the entire world economy is working again, you're not going to see any kind of huge spike in growth, I don't think.
So, John, companies operating in the food and beverage space are unique in that they're considered essential, and we even had an executive order declaring meat plants as essential within the last couple of weeks. So, what can a food and beverage company do to financially ensure continued operations amid the coronavirus pandemic when there's so much bleak news surrounding the economy at the current moment?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And one of the things, we work for a lot of different companies and a lot of different industries. And one of the things I always tell people is that even in the worst economic times, there are winners and there are losers. And bad economies are good times to prepare for the coming. Uh, a bad time is the best time to prepare for the coming good times. So companies with strong balance sheets that are able to invest are able to make new products, new acquisitions. This is the time to invest for the future. And the food companies that are able to do that, that have strong balance sheets, will come out of this very well. Whereas those that have weak balance sheets will probably not come out of this.
So, I think that about wraps it up, John. Where can our listeners go to learn more about your organization?
Well, we're an economic research firm located in Brooklyn, New York. Our website is guerrillaeconomics.com. That's guerrilla like the fighters coming out of the jungle. GUERRILLA economics.com. And we put out a monthly newsletter. Please sign up for it, and you'll get our pontifications every month.
We'll make sure to put a link in the description so that you can get to John's organization and take a look at what they are publishing every month. So, with that said, we'll close this week's edition of the Food Institute podcast. If you like what you heard, please like the video. If you'd like to learn more, please take a look at the links in our description to learn more about the Food Institute and what membership could do for you and your company. So, until next time, this is Chris Campbell signing off.